Welcome to Igniting Compassion. I'm your host, Katrina Valancourt, and this is also hosted by Spirituality Gone Wild. We're very excited to be having our third episode in this series of Igniting Compassion, specifically looking across the aisle, looking at how do we bridge this political divide that so many of us are experiencing, something that's been so hard on our communities, on our families, and the relationships that are most important to us. So I'm delighted this week to have John Kinyon, certified NVC trainer of 20 years, also founder of Mediate Your Life, with me again to support this across the aisle conversation, as well as our guests from last week. So we're going to take the conversation deeper from what we did just last week. John, welcome to the show. Whoops,
Yeah.
bring it on. There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be back.
Yeah, great to have you here. So let's dive right in, because I know, we went into the introduction of who you are a couple weeks ago, and later on I'll post that link so people who are interested in really getting John's background can dive deep with the show from 2 weeks ago. And last week we also ran this show, but for the sake of this week, of course, we want to go over how Across the Aisle works so that our listeners can follow along and really apply these principles in your own life as well. John, what would you like to say just as an introduction here?
Yeah, as an introduction, so the Across the Aisle idea came from a longtime colleague, Paul Sterling, and we were working together on something else, and then he brought this idea out, given the political climate right now and the election season, and that we could start offering something in a online group forum that would just invite anybody that wanted to come and have these conversations across the aisle. Paul was going to be here today. He couldn't. It looks like he's not going to make it. Yeah, so we've been doing it, I think, 5 or 6 weeks now on Wednesday evenings, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. And possibly after the election, we'll see. And it's just been the idea that, to bring to the conversation, understanding, listening, hearing. So often we get in the polarized around the content, and what we wanted to offer is a space where people could really focus on the hearing and the understanding, and the idea that, with our differences. So even though we might really differ strongly, if we can stretch that muscle, which is difficult for most of us, especially when we really care passionately, but to stretch that muscle and build that muscle to really try to understand, even if, and that's separate from agreement. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing. And when we're really in that mode, it's just trying to understand the other person's perspective. And my belief that creates a bit of connection. Even though there's the lack of agreement, we start to feel a little more connected because we're trying to hear each other. And that's the main intention. And from that place, we can more easily drop into where we share. So there's where the differences we hold around what we believe and what we want to do or not do, or strategies, we could call them. But underneath that, we do share as human beings this sort of underlying commonality, what we all need and value and want at a more universal level. And these ideas come out of body of work that I've been part of for, like Katrina said, 20 years or more, nonviolent communication. And I like to call these sort of principles of it just basic general principles of empathic communication. So communication that's about creating or sort of accessing our natural empathic connectedness that we often get disconnected from. But that connection, I believe, is always there to tap into. And so communication that really gets us in touch with that connection and the natural sort of compassion that comes out of that too, and cooperation. So that was our idea, to bring that to the political forum, the political beliefs and conversations, and really try to support a different kind of conversation. So that's what we're going to model again today.
Great, thank you so much. So let's get into it a bit. We're going to just start out by sharing a few slides that really go into the spirit of what this is about. Of course, from Dr. Martin Luther King, returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I'm really thinking about some of the things that happen online, the name calling and the persecution of each other that's happening there. And so this, of course, from Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, every criticism, judgment, diagnosis, and expression of anger is a tragic expression of an unmet need. So when we're receiving some of that pushback online, oftentimes it's somebody who's in pain and they don't know how to express it. So again, we're going to be sharing a different way to express and to relate to each other on this show. And a reminder that just because you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong, right? You just haven't seen life from my side. So it's this reminder, like, we can be totally right for ourselves, but let's also be willing to step out of our own perception and see if we can enter fully into the perception of somebody who thinks and believes very different from us, and see if we can actually imagine life through their experience.
Let me just add something there, Katrina, on that point, since you're there, it is possible to really stay connected to your own truth and reality and what really seems like true for you, and do what Katrina just said, and try to see through the other person's experience and try to understand that experience, but without losing what you really feel and experience is true for yourself. It is possible to hold both, and you don't have to give up yourself in order to understand somebody else. So,
yes. Yeah. Yes, it's a temporary putting my own ideas aside so that I can really be receptive to understanding ideas that are perhaps foreign or even seem against my own ideas. So it's just putting it aside temporarily. You can pick it up anytime. And this reminder then from the Dalai Lama that really it's only the development of compassion and understanding for others that can bring us the tranquility and happiness we all seek. I love that reminder for this time when so many of us are seeking tranquility. So our goal here is that everybody who speaks is heard, they're understood, and they're valued for their contribution to the conversation. That's the threefold goal. And then, John, if you would share about these next three questions.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. So, yeah, good. So this is a template that we've developed. When each person is speaking, we're just going to request that you try to kind of use this template to focus what you want to share, how you want to express what's really important to you to say. And I'll go over those just in a moment more, but let me just share the overall kind of process that Paul and I have come up with, which is to have someone start by expressing some viewpoint, opinion that they hold, belief, and then when that person's complete, then have the next person who wants to say something, but first that our process is to ask that next person to say back what they heard the first person say without having to agree with anything, just saying, okay, I heard you say this, and this is what's important to you. And right. So that's the part. First person speaks, then next person reflects back what they heard the first person say, and then it's this next person's turn to say what they want to say. And then we go to the next person using that basic process. So that's the kind of overarching process we use. And while I'm sort of saying that, I just something Chris brought up, who's going to be one of the participants today from last time, that I think it's a great idea that when you're speaking, we ask that you don't refer back to what somebody said in terms of, well, so-and-so said this and I disagree, or because you might not capture exactly what they said in a way they feel is kind of does it, or it just can trigger things. So better if you can just say, just speaking from like, okay, what I want to say now is, without referring back to this person said this and I'm countering something about that. So that can be a little hard to do, but see, we're going to ask if you can really stay with just focusing on what you want to say without referencing others here today. Let's see. Yeah. So and then we're asking people generally just try when you're not speaking, listening from your heart, so to speak, trying to just be present and open. And okay, so let's go back to those questions, Katrina. When each person it's turn to speak, we're just going to ask you to try to use this. First, start with what issue or topic you want to speak about. And we ask that you just pick one. That could be hard to do. A lot of these issues interrelate, but try to just pick one thing, one topic or issue you want to speak about, right? That's the first thing. Just sort of name that. And then what meaning or story are you giving to it? Like it's a kind of way to frame it. Instead of this is the truth, it's more like, okay, what this means to me is, or what I'm telling myself about this, or the story I have about it, right? And then to speak to that, kind of how you're framing it from your perspective. And then third point, how do you feel about it? Like in your body, how do you feel? And what do you want? Like what's important to you that you're really wanting? So I'll be supporting you going through those questions, but that's what we're going to ask to follow with each person who speaks. And then that's it.
All right.
We're maybe ready to go, Katrina.
Great. Let's do it. So you'd like to do a demonstration and then?
Yeah, let's do a demonstration, you and me first, and then we'll bring the others on. So Katrina, so using those questions, do you have an issue, topic, an area you want to speak to for this moment?
I do. The topic is, I saw an article on Dr. Mercola last night that included a video of a really high-powered attorney who is creating a class action lawsuit that is worldwide. And it is against a number of people who have been involved in what he says is disinformation about the coronavirus and lockdowns that are doing way more harm than good and don't have there's not enough evidence to say that these lockdowns are necessary. The evidence is highly lacking. So that's just a little bit of what was in this long article.
Okay, so it's an article that was basically making this point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what are you kind of, what does that mean to you that you're making the thinking you have about that you want to express?
Yeah. What it means to me is that there is like really intense high level corruption that's happening on a global scale. And that a lot of people have been fooled into thinking that this virus is a whole lot more dangerous than it is. But it's also, to me, means, yay, there are people who are fighting the good fight. And so all of that is in what I'm making it mean.
Okay. All right. Now, and as you say that, how do you feel? Like, what's the feelings, emotions in your body? Kind of, what do you feel right now as you say that?
I feel a combination of stress and outrage over what I see as being disinformation and scare tactics and lockdown. Okay. And I'm feeling a lot of hope when I consider that the house of cards could tumble.
Okay. And then, so that might get to a little bit of what you're wanting. Okay. So maybe say a little more just as that last part of this third point of what you're kind of hoping for, your vision, what you really want.
Truth and justice.
Truth and justice.
Truth and justice. Yeah. Wow. And well-being for the planet, physical well-being and financial well-being. This has really had huge impact on so many people.
Well-being, truth, justice, well-being. Yeah. Thank you. And so what Katrina just did for those watching, listening, that Katrina, because what we want, I think of, can be at a couple different levels. It can be at the level of just what we personally want, kind of more specifically, like I want this person to do that. I want this thing to happen. And then there can be what we want at a more general, universal level, like truth and justice and well-being, something that every human being on the planet could relate to. So we call these universal needs and values. And that comes out of the nonviolent communication training. So people don't have to get that distinction right away. I'll do a little bit of kind of coaching perhaps around that. But for the most part, we're just asking, what do you feel? And sometimes we mix up what we're feeling with what we're thinking. So I'll kind of maybe coach a little around that and then getting to what we want at various levels. So thank you, Katrina, for modeling that in a way I really appreciated. And then the next part of the process, we can bring on the other participants maybe and have the next person reflect that back. And then I'll help anytime anybody's struggling with either the expressing or the reflecting back. I'll support that. But yeah, I'm thinking actually let's just dive right into bring the others on and see who wants to see if they can say back what you said.
Okay, great. And what I'd love to do is just bring on the next person who's going to speak rather than having everyone in the room all at once. So if you're in the green room and you would like to give empathy and be the next person to speak, please raise your hand so I can bring you into the room.
Ideally, if you have a contrary opinion to what Katrina said, don't have to, but just so we can really practice with where we have differences and trying to hear and understand.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a contrary opinion, but you've got a topic. Okay, great. I see Lance. Welcome in.
Okay, welcome, Lance. Good to see you again, Lance. Thanks for coming back. And so, Lance, are you willing first to say what you heard Katrina say without needing to agree with anything?
Right.
What you heard?
I heard Katrina talk about a person coming on, an attorney coming on to Dr. McCullough's podcast or whatever it was, basically saying that he was going to create a lawsuit suing everybody who was involved in COVID protocols, I guess, including the lockdown. And I'm not sure exactly how that looks, but I also heard her say that, it created a range of feelings of, the frustration and anger about or not being able to get a clear sense of what is true and not true, and that she's leaning into wanting that truth.
Yeah, and you want to say anything about what her kind of the meaning that when she read this article, I think it was, or this information she got, what she thinks about that, like kind of her story about it. Maybe you want to say anything more about that?
That's good. What I got was that she trusted this person, and that she doesn't trust the people that that this person is suing or focusing on, and the overall feeling was that of distrust and sense of confusion out of mixed messages. How's that?
Okay, we can check back with her. How about one more? What is she wanting? What's important to her that she's hoping for and wanting that you heard?
Truth, a sense of being able to decipher and discern what is actually a true message, and some harmony and connection, cohesion within our society and in our communities between people.
Okay. Yeah, that's so. Katrina, in terms of feeling heard and gotten, anything you want to clarify or underscore?
Sure, just a little clarification. I don't view it as trying to figure out the truth amongst mixed messages, because I have a particular viewpoint in terms of the messages, in terms of what's true and what's not. And I wanted to add in that this attorney successfully sued the Deutsche Bank and Volkswagen and was able to, he's a high-powered attorney. He's not just some guy. So other people might hear what I say and say there's mixed messages and it can be conflicting. For me personally, that's not how I'm seeing it. I'm seeing there are messages that are speaking the truth and there are messages that are not. And that's just my personal view.
So again, that's kind of like the second point of the meaning that you make out of this is about believing that there's this disinformation going on at the level that this person's talking about. And so that and then the feelings that go for you, again, a kind of say again, the frustration, or what was it again that you said?
Yeah,
For your
well, stressed and outraged.
stressed and outraged. Yes, yes.
That I perceive.
Yes. Yes. And then the wanting of the truth. And how about Lance's guess about connection and harmony? Is that in there? Is that in there for you?
Sure. I mean, I think when there's truth and justice, then connection and harmony are also values that get met.
Okay. And well-being, you said. So maybe Lance, maybe just where there was a little clarification, you want to just reflect that back before you express your.
Right. The clarification that I heard was that she wasn't necessarily interested in discerning the quality of truth that's out there and disinformation, because she already has an internalized sense of knowing that what her truth is, or what the truth is. And therefore it felt like she was kind of saying she wasn't actually open to the various sides. That's what I heard.
So you heard she wasn't open. How about, I didn't quite hear her say that, but maybe what I heard maybe as a reflection could be, Katrina, I heard that, when you got this information, you're clear for yourself that there's this certain kind of disinformation going on, and that you're looking forward, you're seeing it being kind of exposed, something like that.
Well, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
But that's kind of, and I think I see Katrina nodding her head, maybe say something just along those lines of just, that's more like just what her take on it is, like, versus she's not open, but more just like what she's saying about what she believes and what she wants.
Right. Which is that she has a bias, and this attorney spoke to her bias, and therefore she's comfortable with that as being the truth.
And what is, just say that the thing that she believes is true?
That misinformation is being put out by the people who are, I'm not even sure who these people are that she's talking about, but the people who are responsible for the shutdowns. I know that was
okay. Yeah.
The shutdowns, and I'm not sure what else, but that was a big piece of it.
Yeah, I think that was the clarification, just her sense of that.
Right.
And okay, so Katrina, and again, this is not about agreement. So we're not asking Lance you to agree with this, just to clarify, really clearly try to get what she's saying.
Yeah.
And Katrina, do you have a sense Lance is getting it now? Do you feel understood enough for this moment?
I feel understood enough. Thank you.
Great. Lance, thank you for staying with that. Really appreciate it. So now your turn, if you would, kind of staying with that template of maybe starting with what's the issue, topic, kind of area you want to focus on for this moment to talk about?
Right. I kind of want to stick with Katrina's point versus me talking about point.
Kind of staying with that area that Katrina spoke to. Okay.
Right, because you brought me in because I had a disagreement with her point. If I just come on and talk about something completely separate, then we don't get to work through the tension of where the disagreement is and see why that disagreement exists. At least that's
sounds good. So you want to respond to that now? Do you have what's the kind of thing, maybe your belief or how the meaning that you have about this area that you want to express?
Right. We are in agreement that there is a flood of misinformation that is in our social discourse right now. I believe that the flood is not only coming from internally within our social media industrial complex, which incentivizes people to weaponize disinformation within our country, but it's also coming from outside of our country. And that's just, microwaving what's happening. That's my belief.
About disinformation, right? Some overlap with what Katrina's saying, but also kind of is there some real, you want to say some distinction there with what she said about disinformation? You're talking external, kind of outside the US influences, and internal, but is there any like clear kind of demarcation you want to say, yeah, this is where I believe something a little different than Katrina just said?
Right. So without actually having any details about the article or whatever it is that she read, I would say that it seems to me that there's a breakdown. I don't know if it's the logic or what, but if we go back, the reason that we shut down the certain economies and essentially the country was because our medical institutions were being overwhelmed by sick people coming into the hospital and dying. And that, to me, is an unassailable fact, because we could track it live. And so because we recognized very quickly that the nature of this virus, that if it wasn't capped, the spread became exponential. And I don't remember there being any argument about that happening. We zoomed up really quickly. It went from like 0% to almost like 3 to 5% in terms of each person being able to other people.
Yeah.
And so in order to slow that down, we had to stop the spread, therefore stop the infection rate. And because it had gotten so bad so quickly, that was the result, was to shut everything down. Now, if we look at other countries that have handled it successfully, they're no longer shut down anymore. We continue to be shut down because we don't handle ourselves effectively because of all of the misinformation and all the other kinds of reasons that are going on. So
can I just try to see if I'm getting the belief, the central belief in what I'm hearing you say, that in terms of the shutdown and information, so you're saying you believe like that hospitals getting overwhelmed is just true. Like you really believe that's true. That information's true, that we need to do things to mitigate the overwhelmingness of people getting sick and going to hospitals is true. And other countries have done that better than us. Like those are things that you really believe are true and accurate, and then not disinformation, and that there is other disinformation that's sort of confusing all those issues. Is that accurate?
Correct.
So if that feels succinct enough for you for the moment, how do you feel about that right now? Like, what are your emotions and feelings in you about this?
Disappointed, sad for our culture and our humanity.
Yeah. Disappointed.
Concerned about our ability to course correct as we move into what's going to be probably the most intense part of this last 7-month journey that we've been on.
So that's starting to get in what you want. So in this third point, we're asking not only how people feel, but what you want in relation to that. So it sounds like wanting some sense that we can course correct and make things better, right? What else? What would you say you're wanting, like you're hoping for, and that these feelings are about what you want?
Yeah, I would like us to be able to have better conversations and more transparent conversations. There's sort of tired of hearing, experts not actually, the ones that have different opinions, not being in the same conversation so that we can all witness them. It's like one person's on Fox News and one person's on CNN, and they're having their opinions independently of each other, but we're not actually parsing what the differences in those opinions are and what are the weaknesses in their arguments are. And to a certain degree, there's certain things that we just don't know yet because we're finding it out, and this is a novel virus. So we can agree up, sort of like the mutual, the universal needs. We can agree upon some universal facts that we don't know everything about this. We're still learning about this. So let's stay in curiosity rather than making claims that we know when we don't know. And that's
so wanting kind of this openness and curiosity to what we don't know, wanting conversation and transparency to try to get to maybe some kind of shared understanding or reality. Is that all resonating?
Exactly. Okay. Transparency, definitely. And direct dialogue and communication.
Direct dialogue. Yeah. Okay.
And because we are in a social media world, we're not getting direct dialogue. Most of the time it's over text.
Right. It's like all fragmented. It's not where it's coming together to try to get to some shared understanding. So transparency, direct dialogue, and then, wanting the benefits of that to come. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And of course, sort of the NVC principles of really wanting to hear each person. And I think that's essential. And like I say, I have a saying that knowingness is a hell of a drug. Righteous indignation, another amazing drug. And rather than getting sucked into that belief that we actually know stuff that we know we don't know, how do we stay in
curiosity and openness and listening and curiosity and openness? Okay. So I want to see if, we can get to other folks and keep, hopefully we can get back through and get back to you again. Now, Lance, I know you were saying you want to drill down. My hope is even if we go to a new person, it'll still keep building on this conversation and maybe the same topic, but we'll leave it to the next person if they want to stay on this topic or go to another one. But thank you so much. And let's see who the next person wants to come on. Katrina, I'm thinking maybe Happy and Free, because that could be a good counterpoint, but Chris, maybe, Chris is the other person too that we have.
Yes. I'm imagining Happy and Free might want to go. Would you raise your hand to see if that's true? I can see the greens. Okay. I can't hear you, but I'm going to add you to the stream here.
Okay. Hello again, Happy and Free.
Hello.
Thank you for coming back. Okay. So is one of you, maybe, I think if you both are going, it might get a little confusing. Maybe just pick one of you to do it this time, and then another of you can go the next or a later time if that works for you. So whoever wants to go, are you first willing to say what you heard Lance say? Again, you don't need to agree with anything, just the essence of what you heard him say.
Well, I think first of all, we wanted to establish that the topic wasn't igniting either one of us. In fact, we agree with him that a lot of what he said. So I think it might be better for Chris because it wasn't really that controversial. I mean, we have a slightly different.
Okay. Well, let's see if Chris wants to go, given what you're saying. But I think it could work fine if even what you've said, to still go. But let's just see if Chris would really like to go next. And otherwise, we could stay with one of you. Chris, do you feel like it'd be good for you to go next, or?
I will yield my time for now.
Okay. Thanks. So how about Happy or Free? If you're willing to go next, one of you. And even if, you can bring up something else after, but to at least say what you heard Lance say until he says, yeah, you got me. You heard me.
Okay. I'll speak to it a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
Regarding Lance and speaking to what he was talking about, the COVID-19.
Yeah. What you heard him say.
And the hospitals being filled, and from his sources of information that's what he believed was actually true, and that was the instigation for the lockdowns in the beginning. Is that what you intended to say? That's what I heard.
Okay. Yeah. There's some other things around that, but maybe that we'll see. We can check back with Lance if that gets to the heart of it. Now, how's Lance feeling? Do you remember how he said he's feeling and what he's wanting?
Well, what he was feeling is possibly what is somebody else feeling? That's a good question.
Yeah, he said it, but it's a little while ago. So maybe just take a guess at what you
kind of got into a lot of topics and a lot of different angles on
But
it.
he can say it again, but any guess?
What you were feeling.
Yeah. What do you feel?
Speaking about the COVID-19 lockdown.
Yeah. I'm feeling some sadness and disappointment with, you know, how we're making a public health thing become a political thing, and that devolution into politics is where we're losing the thread and not being the reason that we're the #1 country in deaths right now. And
so, but let's just take that, just so it's a bite-sized chunk. So, are you willing just to repeat that back?
Sad and disappointed were the feelings behind what you were saying.
Okay.
The content of what you were saying.
Okay. And now what's Lance wanting? He talked a bit towards the end about what he's hoping for, what he's really wanting.
I think like all of us, he would want to have harmony, to have a sense of peace, to have a sense of maybe even security about what's the future going to bring with all this, because it's unknown. We don't know which direction it's going to go. We don't know if we're going to have another round of coronavirus or whether we're just going to have another round of media around coronavirus, again, for political purposes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can overlook the actual virus itself. You know,
so I think that might be true for him. What I heard him say was he wants transparency, direct dialogue, and a kind of listening and openness and curiosity. If you heard anything along those lines, maybe just reflect that back as well.
Yeah, I did hear him say towards the end that he was open-minded to hearing other perspectives, and he was curious about, you know, what was going to happen.
And wanting basically the public figures, you know, to be where the information coming from, to have those kind of conversations more directly, more openly, more transparently, so that we can maybe get to a more shared reality of our information. Yeah.
Well, that would be very nice. I don't anticipate that happening.
Well, I'm just hearing that's what Lance said. I'm just reflecting what I heard Lance say. And again, it's not about, you know, you may disagree, right, of what's possible or whatever. But anyways, let me just check back with Lance. Lance, do you have a sense that Free's getting enough of it? Anything else you want to clarify?
I feel like you're getting enough of it. I'm not quite sure that Free is actually getting it. Because
if you just zeroed in on just a few things, if he's willing to reflect back, which parts?
I believe that our tendency to identify with our belief systems is a problem. It's a shortcoming that disallows us to allow our beliefs to be challenged, and that we are so invested in what we believe that we are actually not actually able to understand what another person believes.
So let's just take that. So Free, are you willing just to reflect back the essence of that, just that piece right there?
So he was saying in essence that he wasn't sure, based on beliefs, which all human beings have belief structures, which we tend to invest in and believe in, otherwise we wouldn't believe in them. Our perspectives tend to take precedence over the perspectives of others. But therefore we may not always have the capacity to understand another who has a contrary or a different perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, Lance. So do you feel a little more understood for the moment?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Free, for being willing to hang in there with that, to just keep doing that. I really appreciate it. And now your turn to say, again, if you're willing to use this little bit of a structure, kind of starting with the topic area. Do you want to pick the same one kind of, or some other area that you want to focus on to talk right now?
Well, it seems today that what Katrina was introducing was the lockdowns and this attorney, which I don't have any details on it, so I can't even speak to it because I haven't verified the source or the whole thing around it. So I won't speak to that.
Okay.
But regarding COVID-19, I
Yeah.
do have very strong perspectives on it because I've done very thorough research
Okay.
across the political spectrum from easily 150 different news sources,
Okay.
including Fox News and CNN and NPR and, Russia
So,
Times, China Daily, you name it. Because
wow.
when
That's okay. So COVID, you want to focus on COVID, and you've looked at a lot of range of information. And what belief maybe do you want to, that you've come to, that you want to speak to at this moment? Kind of the meaning that you've created from all this research.
Well, in the book, Dawning of the Corona Age, Navigating the Pandemic, that I wrote and took 5 months to do the research and put together and publish as a book. And I'm not trying to sell my book necessarily, but the perspective that I concluded, because in part my background is in whole systems thinking. So for me, like the quote I gave last time about the test of a first-rate intelligence holding opposing ideas in the mind,
Mm.
the truth somewhere lies in the tension between those
Mm-hmm.
forces, or different ideologies or different ideas, or even different news sources. And it takes a discerning mind to be able to look at all of that evidence and then have the aha moment of what one believes may be true in that situation.
And
Like
do you
what-
want to say one piece of that you've come to believe is true, that you want to speak to in this moment, kind of to put out there in this, that you feel is important to express a truth that you've come to for yourself, at least?
Well, I've come to the conclusion that the COVID-19 was real, and it is real as a virus.
Mm-hmm.
And the reaction to that virus was overreaction not for public health matters and public health concerns, but for the purpose and the sole purpose of a global regime change, to actually change the mindset of human beings, to give people a choice to comply to the narrative that's being delivered or to not comply with that narrative. Wearing masks, not wearing masks. Were the hospitals overwhelmed? Were they not? They were overwhelmed in some areas for a short while, but not to the point of justifying the levels to which the lockdowns were implemented by executive order by various governors of various states, mostly California, New York, places like New Jersey, places like that.
So there's a belief about regime change there. Could you just kind of say a little more, just specify that? You think kind of things were being said in order to promote that, or, right? Can you say a little more?
Well, the pandemic in and of itself, believe it or not, was rehearsed, planned. Whether it was done as an accident that China released this, or whether it was done as an act of war, in which case, China, with full knowledge of the danger of this virus, went ahead and let it infect the rest of the world before the rest of the world knew what was happening, before the US knew what was happening, before Europe knew what was happening.
Okay.
And it wasn't just China's idea of global regime change, but other institutions of government, call it deep state, new world order, whatever you want to call it, that had and has been planning to change our government from that of a free country republic to that one of a socialist country. And all of the evidence that I've seen in terms of the behaviors of the political structure across the political structure, Republicans and Democrats, has been that this is the tension point between, in the middle of this COVID-19.
Okay. Okay. So now are you willing to say how you feel about it in this moment? Kind of that takes, people can connect to your humanity that way through your feelings. If you're willing to share how, when you think about this and talk about it right now, how do you feel in your body? What's there?
I actually feel a great deal of peace in myself, partly because I've come to my own conclusions. I've done my own thinking.
Okay.
Relied on any particular one source or a couple of sources to come up with what I see is happening, and that I see what's happening, I can now respond as a human being to navigate my life, make choices in my life, so that I can live fully and completely as I am, even in the midst of global regime change, a pandemic, COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I actually feel a lot of peace.
Yeah, I hear that.
Myself, I don't necessarily feel it in other people that I might be communicating with, because we might have different perspectives.
So in terms of what you're wanting, like, it sounds like that wanting that you just expressed, maybe about living kind of being able to navigate life clearly and make choices for yourself. And is that kind of what you'd say, what is right in what you're expressing, what you want, what's important to you around this?
What's important for me, why the book was subtitled Navigating, because I see what's happening, even if it's only for me. I've made choices to continue to live in a free country, in a free world, not afraid of COVID-19, not afraid of the flu, not afraid of...
Okay. To live freely and not afraid, to live in freedom and not afraid.
Yeah, freedom.
Freedom and not in fear. Yeah.
And
okay.
I'm okay with that. And I wish, what I want, what I wrote the book for, was to inspire others to wish to do the same.
To also have that, to also have freedom and not live in fear. Yeah.
You still live in a free world once you at least can navigate what's going on.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Happy. I'm sorry, Free. Free.
Happy, because she's my inspiration. So.
Yeah. So I want to see if we can get to Chris and then back to you, Happy, in the time that we have. So if that's okay, if you're ready for that, Free, I'd like to go to Chris. And Chris, are you willing to say what you heard Free say first before speaking?
Yes. So Free, some of the things I heard you say is that you see the coronavirus pandemic as a opportunity for certain forces to bring about global regime change. With that, you've found a way to come to your own conclusions based on your research about what's going on and what it means, and that you've integrated that understanding in a way that allows you to live with a sense of peace and freedom. And one of the things that you desire is that other people would also be able to have freedom from fear and express freedom in their own lives as well.
You nailed it, Chris.
Perfect. Wow. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for doing that.
Say, and that's how I feel.
Right
All
on.
right. Okay, Chris, what would you like, if you start with, kind of the area you want to focus on? What?
Yeah. So there's some items that I'm going to bring up that be interested to hear, maybe in another forum, the perspectives from other folks. But, talking about things like what I think was referenced as maybe like Event 201, what I think might have been referenced as organizations like the World Economic Forum. And so, those things I've spent some time researching myself, and I, have my own levels of concern. But the concern that I want to bring forward now is around a strategy, and we'll just take Russia as a focus right now.
Okay.
There's a man named Alexander Dugin that maybe some folks are familiar with from the research that they've done. He wrote a book in the late 90s that's now been called Putin's Playbook. And it's pretty disturbing about what's discussed in there, especially when you see how, when the book was written, what has actually taken place based on the ideas that it was putting forth that they wanted Russia to do, and also certain outcomes that they wanted to see. Things like Brexit, for example, was something that they had mentioned that they wanted to see. Of course, they didn't call it that because they didn't have the name. So I just wanted to...
the activities of Russia, right? Maybe that's kind of focusing in. And what is there some particular belief you want to put forward about what you think's going on there?
Yeah, I'm gonna be quick here in reading just a short excerpt from the book that he has, or one of the books that he has.
Okay.
Talking about Russia, his recommendation is that Russia should use its special services within the U.S. borders to fuel instability and separatism. For instance, provoke Afro-American racists. Russia should introduce geopolitical disorder into internal American activity, encouraging all kinds of separatism and ethnic, social, and racial conflicts. Actively supporting all dissident movements, extreme, racist, and sectarian groups, destabilizing internal political processes in the U.S. It would also make sense to simultaneously support isolationist tendencies in American politics. Okay, so that's what was written, but like, what's my meaning and what do I believe about this? Well, when I see that Russian intelligence is being used as a primary source for information that's being shared with the American public by people in our government, let's say Lindsey Graham, for example, who he declassifies this document, that in the document itself, it says, paraphrasing, this comes from Russia and we have no idea if it's real or not, but here it is. And it has all these claims. I get really concerned. I have a need for stability. I have a need for truth. And when I can see that in my world, what I see is Russia having a particular interest in spreading disinformation and creating stabilization, which there's plenty more to talk about on that topic. But then to see that it's almost as if certain people in our government are being used as like willing participants and instruments in this spreading of disinformation. The last thing I'll say is the shrugging off of this as a real issue in our country by saying like Russia, as a way to just like dismiss what's happening versus taking it seriously, because I care about our country and the integrity of our political systems and our social systems. So the feeling, I mentioned the need, the feeling is anger. I get angry that these things in my evaluation are shrugged off. Marsha. So I'd say that's the whole.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm hearing that in terms of what you believe is that Russia is actively using these methods to destabilize the country, and some of our politicians are being supportive of that in a way. And you're really angry and concerned, and you want stability in our country and kind of protection from this. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see. If we go to Happy. Happy.
We're interchangeable.
What you heard, I was doing a little bit of paraphrase myself to clarify, but now just what you heard from Chris before you express. Are you willing to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you, first of all, Chris, for introducing us to a new source of information. And in fact, I'm so interested that I just Googled Alexander Dugin, and you had mentioned his playbook, Putin's playbook, that was written some time ago, that the essence of the playbook for you was that that Russia has been meddling, infiltrating, continues to do so in not only elections, but perhaps the opinions of Americans, and including influencing perhaps politicians such as Lindsey Graham's maybe actions or opinions, and that there's this shrugging off of implication, potential, perceived and possibly real, of Russia, and that this makes you feel angry that it's kind of being ignored or overlooked, and that we didn't get to the third part, John, which I believe that the third part is self-evident, but I might be wrong. The second part is asking what he feels, which is angry. But the third part would be, what would you like to see happen? And I didn't hear that, but I'm imagining that Chris is implying that he would like that security, stability, and also would like this to not be ignored. If it's true, then he would like there to be perhaps accountability or some news, somebody talking about this so that it can be brought up.
Looks like you nailed it, Happy. Let's just double check with Chris. Chris?
Yeah, Happy. I think I've gotten. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Happy. So now you have a little bit of time to say something you'd like. So the area, what you believe, how you feel, what you want.
All right. Well, we've all been more broad today, except for perhaps Chris. And the first thing I wanted to say just in a brief response to what Chris had said, not bringing up anything that he said, is just that we pretty much in our research, we agree with Chris, and we also acknowledge that basically all major countries, even minor if they could, but China is greatly influencing the election. Iran is greatly influencing public opinion, and that along with Russia, which might be much less significant, although it's there, of course, because everybody tries to influence each other, is that there's Facebook and Twitter and the billionaires, including Soros and all these other billionaires that have their finger in the pocket. And then those billionaires are supported by, even who knows, the Queen of England, who's the largest land owner in the world. And the Queen of England, nobody mentions her, but there's all kinds of powerful people and players that are trying to create public opinion. So besides that, and I'm sure Chris to a certain extent would probably agree, I just wanted to say that I'm also feeling quite peaceful. I think we're living up to our names at the moment, but I'm feeling quite peaceful. And yeah, right now I'm reading this book, which I'm finding very interesting.
Okay, Blackout.
Right, Candace Owens' Blackout, How Black America Can Make Its Second Escape from the Democratic Plantation. And I'm really enjoying reading it. I'm feeling that she's clarifying a lot of issues and kind of bringing, how do I say, just different challenges and how to overcome them to light. And I'm feeling very clear and clean about that. And then last night we watched this film by Dinesh D'Souza, who's an outstanding author. And I really highly recommend both the book by Candace Owens, Blackout, if we really want to understand racism and that the relative lack of racism today in America compared to even just 50 years ago. And then this Trump card, which is bringing out a lot of revelations that it's not really about Trump. At first I thought, I don't want to watch a movie for an hour about Trump. And then thankfully it was only 5 minutes about him. And it was mostly about all kinds of things that are coming up. And one is that, the Larry Sinclair kind of minor issue about Obama, but also the more important was Tony Bobolinsky and his bringing to light, along with dozens of others, the corruption of the Biden family. And the interview that I heard yesterday.
So can I just interrupt you only because I'm seeing the time and there's a number of things in what you're saying, right? So
because I was in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, okay.
The middle of a sentence is that, and I'd rather speak briefly on the rest part, but that the corruption of the Biden family is the most politically corrupt family in present times. And I'm so delighted that my feeling is I'm so pleased and delighted that the extent of this corruption that has been so well masked is finally coming up to the mainstream media. Most of us have known about it who are researchers for years, but now the people of America deserve to have the right to know. And that's, it's really coming out. It's about to come out. So that's great.
So it sounds, what you're wanting is about kind of this truth being revealed on places maybe where people on the left say don't see it, something like that, maybe some kind of greater revelation of this power that's being wielded. I'd like to go back to Katrina, and Katrina, would you maybe like to reflect back what you heard Happy say, and then we can kind of wrap up from there? Would you like to do that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So there were a few different things that I heard Happy say, and I'm not sure if I tracked it all. So I will do my best. But one is that I heard Happy really agreeing with Chris in regards to the concern over international influence of our information and influence on our elections, and really pointing out that China is having from the research you've done, China has a major role. I think you said Iran as well. I don't remember if you named another country, but recognizing that there's a lot of players who have their hands in it. You also mentioned other influencers. I heard the name George Soros, that's another player that you're hearing has influence in the information we're getting and also in the way our elections are being run. And then I heard you talking about the book by Candace Owens, Blackout, and then there was a Trump video, and I didn't catch the name of it, but a couple of resources. I can almost see it there. Trump card. So that these are a couple of resources that you've been looking at that have helped you look at what's happening in our politics from the perspective of Candace Owens and, of course, this filmmaker. And I know I saw a post recently that you'd put on Facebook about how Candace Owens was really helping to illuminate your understanding of what's happening in Black America from her viewpoint. And I'm wondering if I missed anything in what you said.
I think you were thorough. I'd just like to add that surprisingly, the Queen of England and actually the monarchs around the world, who are the largest landowners and most wealthy, are also quietly influencing this. There's a lot at stake, and that's why the media is so biased generally.
So I'm definitely hearing kind of this theme that there's a lot of really big money influence on what's happening in our country and what's happening in media in general.
And most of all, people's thought, mind control, so that people don't realize that if they keep hearing the same memes over and over, that they start believing them. It gets into their subconscious. And this is all orchestrated by these huge invisible powers from many, many countries and monarchies in particular.
So, and Katrina, what in terms of how Happy's feeling and what she's wanting, maybe do you want to just maybe complete with that part of it?
Sure. I would imagine that there's a feeling of concern about that.
Also peace. I think she said peace, and maybe some concern. Yeah.
Peace. Okay. I missed it when you talked about peace, and that's sounding a little discordant with what you're sharing. Perhaps it's similar to what Free said. It's like if you can see it, then you feel like you can navigate in it. So
what I was referring to, if I may, Katrina, is that I'm feeling more peace and actually just relieved that the information about the corruption of the Biden family is now reaching the mainstream. They're trying to keep it in check, but it's half the country already knows about it, and they're telling everybody else. So it's big story time now. And with the corruption revealed in the Biden family and the collusion of the greatest infiltrator right now is China, that the evidence is coming up. So it's talk about influencing the election just from sharing truth, not by trying to manipulate. So it's giving me a sense of relief that it's finally, all this information that we've had for some time is finally coming into the mainstream media. They can't.
Maybe just reflecting that kind of as a need, as a more universal want and need, Katrina, and then we could complete with that maybe.
Sure. So I can understand, based on research you've been doing for a long time, you've seen things that have led you to believe that there's this corruption, and so now these things that you've been seeing are coming out and becoming more of a regular news that people are seeing. So for you, that's really creating a sense of relief.
Yes, it is.
And I'm really hearing that what you would love is for the truth really to come out, for everybody to be empowered by truth, so that they can navigate this world with a level of peace and ease that you believe, you and Free both believe, is very possible when you can see what's going on.
I would concur. The truth about the evils of socialism and communism, and the truth about how extensive the deep state is. It's not just an American phenomenon. It's worldwide.
So maybe just as, and again, I'm not seeing the time, but so there's the kind of this particular beliefs about what observations and beliefs, and then there's just the universally what we all want, like freedom and truth and liberation from things, right? And where we all can just come together of like, yeah, we all want that, right? So thank you, Katrina, for reflecting all that back. And again, Happy and Free, Chris and Lance. Katrina, any way you'd like to close us up here?
Wow. Thank you again, John, for leading this work. As I've shared with you before, it's really a passion for me. I've seen so many people, their hearts are really hurting because of how these conversations, rather than leading to a deepening of understanding each other, can lead into name calling and an escalation of conflict that can really hurt families. I've heard of people disowning each other over these topics, and that just hurts my heart. I really love for us to be able to connect heart to heart and to see each other human to human. So I love the work you're doing. I love the way we can look at, okay, what's your reality? How are you seeing things? How do you feel about that? What are your values? And something I really heard here among all of us is how deeply we are all longing to really hear the clear truth. And so there's strategies as to how to do that, but that's something I'm really hearing unites everybody here on the call, and I imagine that's pretty universal for everyone right now. So I'm really grateful again for your leadership in this, and looking forward to our Wednesday night call
Tomorrow.
that gives everybody a chance to participate. So Wednesday from 5 to 6:30, and you can find that information at johnkinyon.com on the events page, and please do join us there.
And I just want to say thank you again to everybody. I felt my own mind expanding, my heart expanding in terms of feeling connected as we went and did this process. Thank you all for participating in it. It was really beautiful to me. And just thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Katrina, for hosting this and doing this here and being part of this greater connection in the world. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.